What's up, my comic comrades? Today we're breaking down another Future State title. It's actually one of my personal favorite Future State titles thus far, as it deals with Wally West stealing the Speed Force from several of his fellow speedsters. How and why does this happen? Well, you're gonna have to watch this episode to find out, but I will say it's pretty freaking cool, especially if you're a massive Flash fan like me. With that said, there's no time like the present, so let's break down the entire 2-issue Future State Flash miniseries. Issue 1 starts off at the castle, which is the headquarters for Checkmate, which resides somewhere in the Swiss Alps. We see that the Thinker is planning some sort of attack on Earth 3. And the Thinker says the Peacemaker will take them once the team is on site. Then on the next page, we see Barry Allen Flash, Max Mercury, Jay Garrick Flash, and Avery all break into the castle using tech and weapons from Flash villains. That's right, for some reason these speedsters are using weapons from the Rogues. Barry Allen Flash then starts shooting Captain Cold's ice gun while telling Max Mercury, "Let's move, Team Flash. Quick, Max. Use the weather wand to cut the power." Max Mercury replies, "On it, Flash." Jay Garrick then tells Avery, "Your intel was right. The Thinker is working for Checkmate." She tells Jay, "Hold that portal open, Jay. We may need a fast exit." And she says this while taking out guards chucking stun tops at them, a weapon one could only assume was taken from the Rogues member, the Top. It's not long after that the Flash breaks into the castle that the Thinker gets the upper hand using his mind powers. He then says to himself, "Something doesn't add up. Checkmate knows you speedsters lost your speed. But how? And we know you're stealing weapons from your enemies. But why?" So the second thing the Thinker just said confirms the obvious we already assumed: Team Flash is using weapons from their enemies. But the first thing he said is all kinds of crazy. The speedsters have lost their speed. So they're currently fighting the Thinker without speed, which is why they're using weapons from their old enemies, to give them some upper hand. At this point, Bart Allen comes flying in on a rainbow, stealing the Thinker's thinking cap. Now how and why is he flying on a rainbow? Because he's using Rainbow Raider's Prisma goggles. He even says, "When this gig is done, I'm keeping them." Then moments after this, he gets distracted looking at the thinking cap he just stole. Barry then sees that the Thinker is getting ready to attack and tells Bart to get down. Max then says, "I got him," but it's too late. Thinker was able to fire a blast at Bart from some sort of device. He misses Bart, but the blast hits the Prisma rainbow, causing all sorts of shards to impale Bart, killing him. That's right, we're only 5 pages in and they just killed off Bart Allen. Barry then grabs Bart's body and escapes with Team Flash via a portal made by Jay, while saying to himself, "That moment, still a sharp burning memory. My team, my failure. I can't remember what happened after Bart fell. Can't let myself remember. Have to focus on what Bart's sacrifice was for. Have to focus on that damn thinking cap." The next page then shows us sometime after that where Barry is working in his speed lab on the thinking cap, while saying to himself, "Have to focus on the science. Science reveals answers. Answers build hope." He continues to say, "In the week since I lost Bart, the others have lost hope. Avery has grown angry and cold. Our losses before Bart were already too much for her. Jay has become uncharacteristically fearful without the Speed Force. His age is catching up to him. He's worried about death. For Max, no amount of medication quiets his self-inflicted guilt over Bart's death. Every day I use up preparing for phase 2 was another day the others sit alone. Sit still with their grief about Bart, about Wallace, about Wally. I share their grief, but I can't let them see the pain I carry. I won't dampen their hopes further." So that's kind of crazy. Not only is Bart Allen dead, apparently Wallace West, the current Kid Flash, and the original Wallace West are dead. Or at least something really bad happened to them. But guess what? We don't have to wait long to find out, because on the very next page, the comic reveals what happened to both Wallys. We learned via Barry Allen that over the years, something in the Speed Force changed the Wally he knew. Something else made him hungry. Something else made him take his speed power away. Something else made him murder his cousin Wallace when he attacked Titan's Academy. In the 5 years since Kid Flash was taken from us, I refused to lose hope in saving Wally, against all the precepts of crime and punishment that defined me, but with the instincts of a father driving me. I will track down Wally. I will save him from whatever turned him into the monster he's become. Well, that's one heck of a reveal. Freaking something turned Wally West evil, made him steal his fellow Flash's powers, and kill his cousin, Wallace West. Anyway, after some tinkering with the thinking cap, Barry has modified it for a theory he's working on. He then hops on his Vespa for a ride. Barry ends up passing the Flash Museum where there's protesters yelling, "What did you do with the Flash? Free the Flash. We know you locked up the Flash, just like they're doing in Gotham City." If you've been reading the Future State Batman titles or watching our episodes on the Future State Batman books, you know what that means. While stopping to look at the protests, Barry gets a FaceTime call from Arris. She then gives Barry inside intel on where Wally is. Barry then tells Arris, "I'm headed to Avery's. I have a plan to save Wally," as the phone call drops. When he arrives at Avery's apartment, he sees that Jay and Max are also there with her, and they're all still pretty upset and hurt. But Barry tells them, "Guys, I know it looks bad, but there's still hope." He goes on to tell them, "I figured out that Wally has been giving us a secret signal, based on a Flash fact I told him years ago when he first fought Captain Cold. All those years ago, I taught him when facing a tough opponent, the best plan is to stall for time. This will either wear the foe down or allow time for backup to arrive. I think our Wally is signaling us. I think he's stalling for backup. Why else wouldn't he have killed us by now? We are the most qualified people to stop him, to stop whatever's forcing him to do these horrible things. Our Wally must be influencing whatever's manipulating him to kill. Our Wally is still in there somewhere fighting back. And it's time backup arrived. He then tells them, as we planned from the beginning, these thinking caps will combine and amplify our mental power. Using my knowledge of the Speed Force science and some inspiration from Jay's helmet, I modified the thinking caps. We can connect our brainwaves to Wally's mental Speed Force frequency, a frequency we will dial into with Max's hyper meditation techniques to find Wally no matter where he is. Now we can all conference call into Wally's Speed Force powered brain. Our combined will can help him overpower and expel whatever is corrupting his mind, all without harming Wally or putting any of us in danger. So are you with me? They all reply, how could we say no? If there's even a chance to rescue Wally, we're with you, Barry. So they all put on their helmets and get to work, only to moments later find Wally in Fuji, Japan, killing more people. Wally then sees them and reaches his hand out saying, I can't stop it. It's using me to kill. Barry, stop it. Barry says, stop what? Wally tells him, I'm the rider of the apocalypse. I am famine. Jay then speaks up saying, he's lost his marbles, Barry. Barry then tells him, backup's here. We're gonna work together to free you from, and Wally interrupts telling them, I cannot reconnect you to the Speed Force. It's too fast. It'll drain us, and I'm too weak. Max then says, we'll lend you some strength. We'll disconnect you from the Speed Force to disable it. And Wally tells him, it's too fast, Max. It would kill us. And as the Flashes are thinking of a way to save Wally, whatever's possessing him grabs Jay Garrick by the throat. The monster inside of Wally then looks back at the rest of the Team Flash saying, I have known you were here all along. But I cannot resist letting Wally fuel your despair, stall you while I feed on you. Barry tries to stop Famine, as Wally called him, but he just passes through him like a ghost. As Famine says, such a feast, killing Jay Garrick. Famine then says, what a run we've had, and tells Wally time to return, sucking him back in, possessing him again. He continues to say, but rest assured that today's venture proved quite satisfying. Meanwhile, back at Avery's apartment, we see Arris West arrive and pull off the helmets of Team Flash, saving their lives before Famine could kill them. Unfortunately, it was too late for Jay. He was already dead. We then see a pissed off Barry Allen make his way to a secret room in the Speed Lab while saying to himself, endless conflicts with tech-savvy criminals always stirred dark scientific wonderings that I never allowed myself to indulge until now. Now 1,000 lethal theories flood into my brain all at once. My evidence vault is now my laboratory. My scientific knowledge of the Speed Force is now my countermeasure against it. The weapons of my enemies will become my instruments for the most dangerous test I'll ever run. Stripped of my own speed power, I must devise a plan to stop Wally before whatever consumed him unleashes any more death on this world. Before it can stop me, I must stop Wally for good. As the comic ends. Issue 2 starts off 2 months after Wally killed Jay Garrick. As we see the Flash Museum has all but been torn down, and Barry is still working in the Speed Lab modifying enemies' gadgets to fight Wally as he no longer has the speed power to beat him. But like Barry says, he knows the Speed Force and he knows science. On the next page, Barry continues to say, I have to focus on the science. Science reveals answers, answers build hope. I just hope I won't have to resort to the science when I find Wally. Because again, he's been reverse engineering and modifying weapons from his old enemies, improving their functions. We also learned that in the 2 months since Jay's death, Max Mercury was killed by a disease, and Barry was forced to burn his body to prevent it from spreading infection. We also find out that when Arris left the safety of the lab to find supplies, she never came back, vanishing into the world torn apart by fear and desperation. So is she dead? We don't know. Barry then tells himself, I try not to imagine what happened to her, and from what I'm about to attempt, I try not to imagine what will happen to me. We then see Barry start to record a final message into his flash ring, and then upload it and a record of all of his experiments and data to inspire others to fight the impossible, and to stand as an account of his last race against the odds should he fall in this endeavor. He then uploads all of it into his Speed Lab database, but we see on the last panel on the page, the transmission failed. Barry then starts gearing up, strapping on all the modified tech he's been working on, saying, there was a time when I would have called the Justice League for backup, but they've proven untrustworthy. Whatever's gotten into Wally, I'm battling it alone. My science versus its speed. Just have to focus on the science. Science reveals answers, answers build hope. Hope is power, as we see Barry Allen armed with modified Rogue's weapons. Then as Barry is making his way out to confront Wally, Wally comes out of nowhere stealing Barry's modified thinking cap. Wally then says to him, Barry, I hardly recognized you. I don't need a thinking cap to sense the vile urges inside of you, and now you armed yourself with weapons of those you fought against. It's a sad day when a mentor, an icon, falls so far from his own standards. And fall, you will, at the hands of your own protege. Because clearly, whatever you have planned for us, whatever you've become, Barry, it's positively villainous. And with that, the fight begins. Barry throws one of his Captain Boomerangs at Wally, but it misses. Then when Wally grabs Barry's boots, Barry says the modified weather tips activate, absorbing his Speed Force energy into the reverse generator, creating negative Speed Force energy as he fires Wally with the negative Speed Force. Barry then throws an inhibitor collar boomerang around Wally's neck, saying they home in on the subatomic particle burst from clashing Speed Forces. But this is where things get crazy. Barry then uses the Prisma goggles that Bart used in the first issue, except Barry uses them to cut Wally's legs off. He then uses Heatwave's heat gun to cauterize the wounds before he bleeds out. But come on, us seasoned comic book fans know there's no way Barry just defeated Wally that easily. And on the next page, we see the real Wally come and decking Barry in the face several times, saying he was just a Speed Force duplicate of me. But that hurt. You're not the only one with new tricks. Then one of the hits Wally gives breaks the converter on Barry's back, at which point he activates Pied Piper Hypnosonics, which seems to be working on Wally and whatever the thing is possessing him. While Barry has this possessed Wally on the ropes, he activates a Mirror-Tech duplicator, which is obviously modified Mirror Master tech. But it doesn't stop there. Barry also uses the shell, which is a recreation of Turtle's Still Force field. It works, freezing Wally, at which point Barry says, I could finish this now, but I have to try to get through to Wally one more time. If I could just separate him from this thing. As Barry starts trying to talk to Wally, we see Wally appear in ghost form saying, why are you trying to kill me? Barry answers, I'm not trying to kill you. I'm trying to stop you, Wally, not kill you. But if you're with me now, we can fight what's inside you together. I've weakened it. While he tells him this, Wally says, I'm dying. Need strength to fight back. Running out of time. I need magic like Madame Xanadu or Constantine. Anyone. At which point Barry says, bring them. And on the next page, we see Barry realize it's not really Wally, but the thing possessing him, Famine, as it was called in the last issue. Barry says, it's you. You want me to bring you more victims. Like Jay. Wally would never have asked to endanger anyone else after what you did to Jay. And he says this as he freezes Wally with Captain Cold's ice gun. Now frozen in ice, the possessed Wally says, clever man, as he uses the Speed Force to vibrate through the ice. Possessed Wally then says, you of all people must have known I would use my Speed Force to vibrate this body and melt through this ice. So what were you hoping to achieve? We then see a broken-hearted Barry Allen look away, saying, to stop you, I modified the fuel in Captain Cold's ice gun. You absorbed it, melting the ice. You inhaled it in the steam. The ice you just ingested contains a genetically altered form of Wally's DNA. The re-engineered DNA is now propagating through his body with Speed Force velocity, changing by my design, from the inside, destroying his skeletal muscles, eliminating his body's ability to run. Barry continues to say, there will be no healing from this. The reprogrammed DNA will maintain this condition for his body. Wally is now useless to you. And that's a flash fact. Now get the hell out of my friend, as Famine finally comes out of Wally's body. It's at this point Famine reveals to Barry what he really is and how his power works. Famine says, oh, to savor this dying light in your mournful eyes, Barry, I would go to hell and back for this moment, where you burn your dreams for Wally with your nightmares of science. For this moment where you realize you sacrifice your family in vain to challenge a force beyond your science. I come in the flesh to take in this moment where the magnitude of my manipulations and your failures dawns upon your soul. Finally, you realize that I am Famine, for it is the famine of hope itself that gives me life and purpose. And never have I been more sated than by starving the boundless hopes that so many invest in this Wallace Rudolph West and in you. And on the next page, we see Barry realize how Famine works, saying you don't just feed on the physical, you feed on hope. And you've been with me all along, in every dark moment where my hopes to save Wally failed. Somehow I knew, I felt you were there. You've been feeding on my moments of weakness from the beginning. And as Barry kneels over a dying Wally West, Wally says, Barry, why? With Barry saying, Wally, I failed you, I'm so sorry. Meanwhile, Famine is looking on saying, intoxicating, the taste of your desire and the dying of Wally's final hopes in you. But Barry Allen is my favorite Flash for a reason, not because he's the fastest, because he's not, we know that's Wally West, but because even in the face of death, he never gives up. He lost his speed, and now he lost all of his tech, but he still digs deep down, finding hope that he'll still be able to defeat Famine somehow. But Famine just looks at Barry saying, your endless capacity to build the hopes from which you will fall transcends the divine and proves your worth to me. Because your hope will die infinite deaths between your heart and your mind, and this young man who I've made whole again. As we see that Famine somehow completely healed Wally and possessed him again. And as Famine goes on to possess Wally, he says, I'm sorry, Barry. Famine then goes on to say, Barry, your science and faith have no power here, but please don't stop fighting back for me. As Famine uses Wally's connection to the Speed Force to test Barry's resilience once again by pushing Barry just a moment outside of time so that he'll walk this world as an immortal ghost, as an incorporeal witness, as he feasts on the death throes of all humankind. Famine goes on to say, it's their delicious nature to feed me with their despair, just as it's your nature to replenish hope. No matter the setback I devise for you, this is why I spare you, Barry, so I leave you with this. Know that I will haunt you with unending despair. Again and again, you'll forever feed me because you will never run out of hope. To stop me, you'll just keep running. As Ghost Barry looks at his flash ring on the ground saying, focus on the science. Science reveals answers, answers build hope. The comic then ends with Cybeast picking up Barry Allen's flash ring saying, "We lost Barry Allen, but I've got new intel on the Riders. And I have Barry's flash ring. It's loaded with data. With what we've learned here today, I think Barry's given us a fighting chance for a better tomorrow." This last panel ties into the Teen Titans Future State comic, but with that, the Future State Flash series comes to an end. I gotta say, I dug this Future State Flash series quite a bit. I even like how it ended on a down note with Wally never being free from famine and Barry Allen essentially dying, being just pushed outside of a moment in time. We also don't know the fate of Arris West. Is she actually dead or is she just lost somewhere? But we do know that Bart Allen, Wallace West, Max Mercury, and Jay Garrick are definitely dead. Not to say they're not gonna come back in the future, but for now, they're dead. So I really liked how this miniseries pulled an Infinity War or Justice League Dark Apocalypse War where it ended on a downer. That tactic isn't used often with superhero storytelling, but when it is used, it makes everything that happened in the story feel that much more important because it all mattered. At least for now, and that's all I could ask for. So again, I really enjoyed this series and seeing Barry Allen use the science and knowledge of the Speed Force to defeat an evil-possessed Wally West. My only gripe is that ever since Jeff Johns brought the original Wally West back in the DC Rebirth one-shot from several years ago, DC has been using Wally as like a villain of sorts. For instance, in the Heroes in Crisis event by Tom King, Wally West was revealed to essentially be a murderer. And now in this series, Wally West is a murderer. Sure, he's possessed by famine, so it's not really Wally choosing to kill people, but nonetheless, he's killing people. And I'm not the biggest fan of that. Again, I like this Future State story, but I want my Wally to stop killing people, whether it's because he's conflicted or he's possessed. All I'm saying is I think it's time to give us the good old normal Wally West Flash that we love so much from the 90s and early 2000s. But like I always say, that's just my 2 cents. What do you guys think of this miniseries? Let us know in the comment section. First up for the week of February 3rd, we have Venom Issue 33. As the King in Black spreads his suffocating darkness across the Marvel Universe, Eddie Brock looks for a light, any light that can pierce it, but he comes up empty-handed. Now we have a comic from today's episode, Future State Flash Issue 2. All hope is lost as Barry Allen races to save his former partner, Wally West. Next, we have King in Black Gwenom vs. Carnage 2. It's Gwen Stacy vs. Mary Jane Watson. That's right, Mary Jane Watson is now officially Carnage, and they fight in one epic battle. And finally, we have Future State The Next Batman Issue 3. Batman has captured a pair of murderous fugitives, but he faces a tough decision. Leave them for the magistrate troops, which means certain death, or risk his life and fight his way through Gotham City to deliver them to the GCPD for trial. And just like that, my comic comrades, that brings another episode of Variant to a close. But if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to check out this one right here. And if you like all of our content, subscribe, comment, and like. It always helps us out. But I will see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.